I want to talk about something that feels slightly exposing because it's not about falling fast. It's not even about choosing the wrong people. It's about that moment, that tiny shift. A slower reply, different tone, cancelled plan, a sentence that just feels off. And suddenly your whole body reacts. Not mildly disappointed, but shaken. And the worst part, you know it looks bigger than the situation. You know logically it might not mean what your body thinks it means. But logic doesn't get in there first. Your nervous system does, and it moves quickly. And if you've ever thought, why does something this small feel this big? Stay with me, because this isn't about us being dramatic. This is our wiring. And if ADHD, autism and trauma sit together in your body, that wiring can be really intense. And this isn't just about romantic rejection, it's about life. It's the friend who reads the message and doesn't respond. It's the colleague who sounds slightly colder in a meeting. It's your family member who seems distracted and you can't quite read why. It's not being invited, not being chosen, not being replied to in the same tone as before. And from the outside, although it may look small and other people might genuinely think, what's the big deal? And that can make it worse because you know it looks small. You know other people wouldn't react like this. And you know it's just a message. It's just a tone. It's just a shift. But inside it just doesn't feel small. It feels destabilizing. It can feel like the floor just moved slightly beneath you. And there's a sharpness to it, a sting that goes deeper than the moment deserves. You try to downplay it. You tell yourself you're overthinking. You try to carry on, but your body doesn't let it go easily. It lingers and you feel exposed, almost embarrassed for caring. And there is a kind of rawness to it, like your skin is thinner than anybody else's. And it's so hard to explain that to people who don't experience it. It's not just emotional, it's physical. Your chest tightens, your stomach knots, your thoughts loop, and you feel restless and heavy at the same time, and you can't focus properly, and you replay it whilst brushing your teeth or whilst you're out driving or trying to work. It can derail your whole day. And from the outside, somebody might say, it's not that serious. But inside, it really, really is. Because it doesn't just touch the present. It touches every memory of being left out. Every time you felt misunderstood. Every time that you were too sensitive. Every time you were told that you're overreacting. So when something shifts now, it's layered. It's now plus then. It's the current moment plus all the old ones your body never fully processed. And that's why it can feel debilitating. And that's why it can bring tears out of nowhere. And that's why you can go from functional to flattened in seconds. Oh, and yeah, there's the confusion. Because part of you is watching yourself think, why is this hitting me so hard? And you might even feel shame for how deeply you feel. But depth isn't dysfunction. Intensity isn't immaturity. And for people with ADHD and autism, especially, emotions aren't light touches. They are full body experiences. And when rejection, even subtle rejection, lands in a body shaped by trauma, it doesn't just bruise, it reverberates. And people on the outside may never even see it because you're high functioning. You still show up, you still work, you still reply, and you carry on smiling. But internally, You're processing something enormous. And that invisibility can be one of the most painful parts, because it feels like you're carrying something heavy that no one else can see. Sometimes we're the ones who don't reply. We leave messages unread. We avoid opening them. We see them and we just don't have the capacity to respond. Hours turn into days. Days turn into weeks, and suddenly it feels too late. A bit awkward, a bit heavy. And from the outside, that looks like double standards. We panic when somebody takes 3 hours, but we can disappear for 3 days. So what is that? Hypocrisy, or is it something else? But this is what I've come to understand. When somebody else doesn't reply, our nervous system fills in the blanks. We create our own story. They're pulling away. I've said too much. I'm about to be left. But when we don't reply, it's rarely about rejection. It's usually overwhelm, capacity, executive dysfunction, emotional saturation even. It could be autistic burnout, ADHD avoidance, and sometimes it's that we care too much and responding feels like it requires the right energy. Sometimes it's that we're dysregulated and we can't engage properly. And sometimes it's that we just don't know how to reply without opening something bigger. And it's not about power. It's about bandwidth. But when it's reversed, we assume intent. When we disappear, I'm overwhelmed. When they disappear, they're leaving. And that's not double standards, that's nervous system storytelling. Trauma fills in the blanks quickly. Autism notice shifts deeply, and ADHD struggles with initiation and follow through. So you can have both experiences in the same body. The one who waits in panic, the one who avoids in overwhelm. And that doesn't make you manipulative, it makes you dysregulated. And those are very different things. And I also would like to say this. Sometimes I'm the one who doesn't reply. And it's not because I don't care. And it's, as I said before, it's rarely because I'm rejecting somebody. It's usually something much less dramatic. I read the message whilst I was distracted and I think, I'll reply in a minute, and then I just completely forget. Or I read it and realise I don't quite know what to say yet, so I just leave it. Or it could be that it touches something I don't have the energy to deal with in that moment, so I avoid it. Sometimes it's pure overwhelm, no headspace, no capacity, no spare emotional bandwidth. Sometimes it's that responding properly feels like it requires a level of presence that I just don't have. And I don't want to give it a half response. So I just wait. And then the waiting becomes awkward because I've left it too long. And then it just becomes heavier. And then it becomes avoidance. And that's not a power, that's capacity. But when it's the other way around, when I'm waiting, my nervous system doesn't default to, they could be overwhelmed. It defaults to, they're pulling away. And that's the distortion. So when I disappear, I'm overloaded. When they disappear, I'm being rejected. That gap between interpretation and reality is huge. And trauma fills that gap fast. And autism notices the pattern change. ADHD struggles with initiation and timing. And suddenly you're living on both sides of the same dynamic. The one who waits in pain and the one who just disappears in overwhelm. That's not hypocrisy, that's dysregulation showing up differently depending on which side that you're on. And I think it's important we talk about that, because shame grows in silence. And when we pretend we're only ever the one who's hurt and never the one who avoids, we miss the full picture. This isn't about blame, it's about nervous systems with limited bandwidth trying to manage connection. And sometimes doing it imperfectly. And I think one of the most painful parts of this isn't the rejection itself. It's the story that follows. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. It's not that deep. Why are you making it a thing? Maybe no one says it out loud anymore, but you've internalized it. So when something hits you hard, there's a second wave, not just the hurt, the judgment. You feel embarrassed for feeling. You minimize it, you downplay it, you try to swallow it, and you tell yourself you need thicker skin. You don't just feel deeply because you're weak. You feel deeply because your nervous system is so highly responsive. You've got ADHD intensity, autistic pattern recognition, and trauma memory. That combination doesn't create indifference. It creates depth, and a depth in a world that rewards attachment can feel like a flaw. So you start editing yourself. You try to appear more relaxed than what you actually are. And you rehearse being less reactive, and you aim to be chill. But inside, it still lands. The difference is now you're alone with it because you've decided it's too much to share. And that's where the shame settles. Not in the original moment, but in the belief that your reaction makes you difficult. And there's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with this. It's not just being alone. It's feeling like your emotional world is bigger than what's visible. From the outside, you're functioning. You show up, you reply, you work, you laugh. But inside, something small has unraveled you and no one else can see it. Or worse, they can see you're upset and genuinely don't understand why. And that gap, that's isolating because you start to question yourself. Am I making this bigger than what it is? But to you, it isn't small. It's layered. It's history plus now. It's sensitivity plus memory. It's longing plus fear. And then when you feel everything fully, there isn't a low setting. It's immersive and you might withdraw. And not because you're punishing anybody, but because you're trying to process something that feels so overwhelming. And when you withdraw, people might interpret that as coldness, when really it's containment. You're trying to steady yourself. And there's also grief in this. Grief for how much things affect you. Grief for how easily other people seem to move on. Grief for wishing you could just let it go. But here's what I want to say gently. Sensitivity is not the problem. Unmet regulation is. And isolation makes it heavier. When you understand that, your reactions are nervous system responses, not personality flaws, something shifts. And you don't stop feeling deeply, but you stop attacking yourself for it. And that reduces the loneliness because you're no longer fighting yourself on top of everything else. And I think we sometimes soften this too much. We say it hits hard. We say it feels intense, but sometimes it's crippling. It can take the wind out of you. You can feel physically weak. Your chest aches, your stomach drops, your limbs feel heavy. It's not just sadness. It's like your system goes into shutdown. You might struggle to focus. You might not be able to eat. And you might feel on the edge of tears for hours. And all because of something that on paper looks small. A tone, a pause, a shift. And that's the part that's hard to explain to people because from the outside it doesn't look proportionate, but inside it can feel like loss. And the word loss matters because for a trauma-shaped nervous system, rejection doesn't just register as disappointment. It can register as disconnection, abandonment, being unsafe, being exposed, being unchosen, and that's why it can feel so devastating. Your body reacts as if something essential has been threatened. And when that reaction is strong enough, it can be paralyzing. And you can just lay in bed replaying it. You can lose hours to rumination, and you can feel hollow. Not traumatic, but just hollow. And here's something people don't say often. It can actually feel humiliating because you know it shouldn't have this much power over you. You know other people seem to bounce back faster. So now you're not just hurting, you're judging yourself for hurting, which doubles it. Pain plus shame is heavier than pain alone. And when this happens repeatedly over your life, it can make you guarded. It can make you cautious about opening up because you know how much it will cost you if it shifts. I'm not saying this to say that it's a weakness because I don't believe it is. I believe that it's a pattern recognition trying to protect you from something that has genuinely hurt before. And if rejection has ever felt physically unbearable, you're not exaggerating. Your nervous system is responding at full volume. And when you've got ADHD, intensity, autistic sensitivity, and a trauma memory intersecting, full volume can be loud. The goal isn't to become somebody who doesn't feel deeply. The goal is to learn how to survive the spike without turning it into self-destruction. When rejection hits like this, it doesn't just feel like disappointment. It feels existential. There's the fear of losing them. Not just the person, but the possibility, the imagined future, the version of you that felt chosen, the safety you thought might be building. And when that feels unstable, there's grief. Even if it was early, even if it wasn't defined. Your nervous system doesn't measure technicalities. It measures attachment. But underneath losing them, there's something even deeper. The fear of losing yourself. Because when the spike happens, you can feel yourself unravel slightly. And you might say things you regret. You might withdraw, you might over-explain, you might shut down. And afterwards you think, why did I do that? And there's a fear that your intensity will sabotage connection, that your reaction will push them away. So now it's not just about whether they're leaving, it's about whether you'll become too much. And that cuts deeper. And then there's the third layer, losing control. Because when the pain floods your body, it can feel bigger than you. Your thoughts race, your chest tightens, your focus narrows, you feel hijacked. And that loss of internal steadiness can be quite frightening, especially if you've worked hard to feel stable, especially if you've rebuilt yourself after trauma, and especially if you pride yourself on being self-aware. It's disorientating to know better and still feel overwhelmed. And that's where people on the outside can misunderstand. They might see a strong, articulate, high-functioning woman and think, oh, she's fine. But internally, you're managing something tidal. And tidal waves don't look dramatic from space. They look small. But inside the water, they are incredibly powerful. And that's what rejection sensitivity can feel like. Not fragility, force. And when you experience that force repeatedly, it can shape how you love, how you trust, how much of yourself you show. And it's not because you're weak, but because your nervous system knows how much it costs when things shift. And there's something about the night when rejection hits During the day, you're distracted, you're moving, you're working, you're interacting. But at night, it gets louder, you're tired, your nervous system is already thinner. There are no other distractions, no noise to dilute it. It's just you and your thoughts. And if you're anything like me, this is when it spirals deeper. I replay everything, reread messages, analyze punctuation, remember other moments that felt similar. And then your brain starts building a case. It strings together tiny pieces of evidence. See, it's happening again. And because you're exhausted, your rational mind is slower. Your body is heavier. Your emotions are less buffered. So everything else feels more final, more catastrophic, more certain. It's incredible how convincing 1 a.m. thoughts can be. You can feel absolutely sure something is over, absolutely sure that you've ruined it, absolutely sure that you've misjudged everything. And then sometimes morning comes and it doesn't feel quite as sharp. The facts haven't changed, but your nervous system has, and that tells you something important. The intensity wasn't necessarily truth, it was state. At night, when you're dysregulated and tired, your brain goes into protection mode, and protection mode scans for threat. So it builds narratives quickly. And if you've lived through instability before, your brain is really, really good at building the worst case scenarios. And it's not because you're dramatic, because you've learned to anticipate. That's intelligence misapplied under stress. But in the moment, it feels so real. It can feel unbearable. And you can lie there with a tight chest, staring at the ceiling, wishing you could switch your brain off. That's a nervous system that just doesn't yet know that it's safe. And I've had to learn that slowly. And when I'm in that state, especially at night, I try not to make decisions. I don't send the long message. I don't cut somebody off. I don't confess everything. I don't rewrite the story of the entire relationship because I know I'm in the spike. And that spike is powerful, but it's not permanent. And this isn't about suppressing how you feel. It's about respecting that your nervous system is activated. And when you're activated, your brain is protecting you. And protection mode doesn't think rationally. It thinks defensively. So instead of acting, you contain. You say, oh, this is so big right now. I don't need to solve it tonight. And that sentence alone can prevent so much damage. Because rejection sensitivity disorder can push you to act quickly, to secure, to defend, to withdraw, to overattach. But the most powerful thing you can do is just wait. Not in silence forever, not in avoidance, just until your body comes back online. When your chest loosens, when your breathing steadies, and when your thoughts slow slightly. And then you respond, not from fear, but from clarity. And if I could go back and tell a younger version of myself one thing, it would be this. You feel more than some people, and that doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you wrong. It makes you wired differently. And for years, I thought I was just too sensitive, too reactive, too intense, too affected. And I thought I was the one. I thought I was the only one who could be flattened by something so small. The only one lying awake at night, replaying a tone shift. The only one who could spiral over a delayed reply. And that loneliness, that was almost worse than the pain itself. Because when no one understands the depth of what you're feeling, you start to question your reality. You start to minimize yourself. You start to think you need to harden up. And then I read about rejection sensitivity. And it was like somebody had finally described the inside of my chest. There was a language for it. There was context. There was explanation. It wasn't just, oh, you're so dramatic. It was wiring. It was neurology. It was trauma layered into sensitivity. And that changed something, not because the feeling stopped. They didn't, and they don't. I still feel deeply. I still notice shifts. I still have moments where it hits harder than I'd like. I just don't attack myself for it anymore. I don't build a whole identity around being too much. I understand what's happening, and that understanding creates space. And I can't always change the first feeling. I can't stop the spike from landing, especially not at night. But I can change what I do next. I can wait. And I cannot send the message at 1 a.m. I can remind myself that intensity isn't always truth. And I can choose not to punish myself for feeling. And that's the difference. You might always feel deeply. You might always be sensitive to shifts. And that might not disappear. But you're not alone in it. There are thousands of us walking around high functioning on the outside, tidal on the inside. And when you realize that, that loneliness softens because you're not broken, but you are responsive, you're perceptive, you're wired for depth. Now you just get to learn how to carry without it carrying you. And you don't have to make permanent decisions in temporary states. You don't have to confuse the spike with the truth. And you definitely don't have to do it alone, because you're not the only one who feels like this. And no, you're not too much. You just feel fully. You can't change the way that you feel, but you can change the way that you deal with it. And if this episode felt uncomfortably familiar, if you recognized yourself in the spiral, in the nighttime overthinking, in the shame of feeling too much, I want you to know something clearly. You're not the only one. And there is nothing wrong with you for feeling so deeply. There is something happening in your nervous system. And when you understand it, you stop attacking yourself for it. And that alone changes everything. If this resonated, I would really love you to share this episode with somebody who might need to hear it, because so many people are walking around thinking that they are too much, that they're too dramatic. They're not. They're dysregulated, they're sensitive, they're carrying history, they're wired intensely, and they don't know they're not alone. And if you want to go deeper into this work, into understanding your nervous system, unmasking safely, building relationships from steadiness rather than survival, then stay close. And you can find the podcast, resources and ways to work with me at iliaabatista.co.uk. And if you're listening on a platform that allows it, leaving a review genuinely helps this reach the people who are lying awake at 1 a.m. thinking that they are the only one. You're not. You feel deeply, and that's not your flaw. It's your wiring. You can't always change how you feel, but you can change how you respond, and that is powerful. And as always, until next spiral.